There's something about abandoned houses that feels different from any other place, something that you can't fully explain, because even when they're empty, even when there's no one living inside them, they never feel completely vacant, like the walls still remember something, like the silence inside them isn't natural. And for some reason, the longer you stay there, the more it starts to feel like you're not alone. Tonight, I'm going to share three true horror stories from abandoned houses, places that should have been nothing more than forgotten buildings, but instead became the setting for experiences that still don't make sense. And these aren't just quick scares or imagined fears. These are the kind of moments that stay with people long after they leave, the kind that make you question whether some places are ever truly empty. The first story comes from a group of friends who decided to explore an abandoned house on the outskirts of their town, a place that had been empty for years, with broken windows, peeling walls, and a structure that looked like it had been left to decay slowly over time. During the day, it didn't seem that frightening, just quiet and worn down, but as the evening approached, the atmosphere started to change. The shadows inside growing deeper, the silence heavier, and the feeling of being watched becoming harder to ignore. Still, they went inside, using their phone flashlights to see through the dark interior, stepping carefully over debris and dust as they moved from room to room. At first, nothing unusual happened. Just empty spaces, old furniture, and the faint smell of damp wood and time. They joked around, trying to keep the mood light, convincing themselves there was nothing to be afraid of. But then one of them noticed something strange. A door at the end of the hallway was slightly open, just enough to reveal darkness behind it. He was sure that when they first walked in, that door had been closed. He mentioned it to the others, and for a moment, they all just stood there, staring at it, unsure of what to think. One of them laughed it off, saying maybe they just didn't notice it before, and slowly walked toward it, pushing it open fully. The room inside was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no windows, just bare walls and dust covering the floor. They stepped inside, shining their lights around, checking corners, trying to find anything unusual. But there was nothing there. After a few seconds, they stepped back into the hallway. And that's when something changed. The door behind them slowly closed, not slammed, not forced, just moved quietly until it shut completely. All of them froze. The air felt colder instantly. None of them had touched it. None of them were near it. For a moment, no one said anything, each of them waiting for someone else to explain it, to laugh it off, to break the tension. But no one did. One of them slowly reached out and opened the door again, this time more carefully, stepping back as it creaked open. The room was still empty. Nothing had changed. They stood there, uneasy now, the mood completely different from before. The earlier confidence gone, replaced by something heavier, something harder to ignore. They decided to leave that part of the house and move toward the stairs, telling themselves it was just a coincidence, just the building shifting. But as they walked, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It grew stronger. They reached the staircase and started going up to the second floor, one by one, their footsteps echoing through the empty space. The moment the last person stepped onto the stairs, they heard something behind them, a soft sound from the hallway they had just left. They turned around slowly, shining their lights back towards the direction they came from. And for a brief second, they saw it. The door at the end of the hallway. The same one. It was open again, exactly the same as before. None of them had gone back. None of them had touched it. And yet, it was open. A wave of fear hit all of them at once. Without saying anything, they rushed up the stairs, their movements faster now, their breathing uneven as they reached the second floor, but the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Because now, the house felt different, less empty, more aware. They quickly moved through the rooms upstairs, no longer exploring, just looking for a way out. When suddenly, one of them stopped. He raised his hand slightly, signaling the others to stay quiet. They all froze, listening carefully. And then they heard it. Footsteps, coming from below. Slow, measured, moving across the ground floor. The sound was clear, too clear to be explained by anything simple. Each step echoed upward, deliberate and steady, like someone walking through the same hallway they had just been in. Their fear turned into panic instantly. Without waiting, they ran toward the stairs, not caring about anything else except getting out of the house. But when they reached the top of the staircase, they stopped because the sound had changed. The footsteps were no longer below them. They were on the stairs, moving upward, coming toward them, one step at a time. None of them looked down. None of them dared to. They just turned and ran, pushing through the nearest room, finding a broken window, and climbing out as quickly as they could, dropping to the ground outside without looking back. They didn't stop running until they were far away from the house, their hearts still racing, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. Later, when they talked about it, one detail stood out more than anything else. It wasn't just the door, or the footsteps, or the feeling of being watched. It was the timing. Because whatever was inside that house hadn't made a sound until they tried to leave. As if it hadn't been trying to scare them away. It had been waiting for them to go deeper before finally letting them know. They weren't alone. The second story comes from an urban explorer who often visited abandoned places alone. Someone who enjoyed the quiet, the isolation, and the feeling of stepping into locations that most people avoided, believing that as long as you stayed aware and careful, there was nothing to be afraid of. One night, he decided to explore an old abandoned house on the edge of a rural area, a place that had been left untouched for years, surrounded by overgrown grass and broken fencing. The kind of house that looked like it had simply been forgotten. He arrived just after sunset, wanting to capture photos in low light. And as he approached the house, the atmosphere already felt heavier than usual. But he ignored it, convincing himself it was just the setting. He stepped inside through a partially open door, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as he looked around. The interior was quiet, almost too quiet, with dust covering the floor and walls that showed signs of age and neglect. He moved slowly from room to room, taking pictures, documenting the space. Everything feeling normal at first, just another abandoned structure. But then, after a few minutes, something changed. As he stood in what looked like an old living room, he heard a faint sound behind him, a soft creak. He turned quickly, shining his flashlight towards the doorway he had just come through. But there was nothing there. He paused for a moment, listening carefully, then shook it off, assuming it was just the house settling. He continued exploring, moving deeper inside, checking smaller rooms, narrow hallways, each one darker than the last. And then, as he stepped into a long corridor near the back of the house, he noticed something that made him stop. One of the doors along the hallway was slightly open, just barely. He didn't remember seeing it like that before. He stood there for a moment staring at it, trying to recall if it had been open when he passed earlier, but he couldn't be sure. Slowly, he walked toward it, his flashlight steady in his hand, and gently pushed the door open. The room inside was empty, no furniture, no windows, just a small enclosed space with cracked walls and dust on the floor. He stepped inside briefly, scanning the corners, then turned back toward the hallway and froze. The door behind him was moving, slowly closing, on its own. He stepped forward quickly and stopped it before it shut completely. His heart rate picking up slightly now, the uneasiness becoming harder to ignore. He told himself it was just the angle, maybe uneven flooring, something simple, but the feeling didn't go away. He stepped back into the hallway and continued moving, his pace a little faster now, his attention sharper. And then he heard it again, this time clearer. Footsteps, soft, slow, coming from somewhere behind him. He stopped instantly, turning around, his flashlight scanning the hallway. But there was nothing there. The corridor stretched out empty, silent, exactly as it should have been. He listened carefully, waiting for the sound to repeat. But nothing came. For a few seconds, everything felt normal again. Then, he heard it. A single step, much closer. His grip tightened on the flashlight as he quickly turned again, his light cutting through the darkness. But once again, nothing. Just empty space. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. He took a step back, his instincts now telling him something wasn't right, something he couldn't explain. Without wasting more time, he decided to leave. He turned toward the direction of the entrance, moving quickly now, no longer interested in exploring. But as he walked, the sound returned. Footsteps, this time matching his pace. One step for every step he took. He stopped. The sound stopped. He moved again. It followed. A cold wave of fear ran through him as he realized what was happening. He wasn't alone, and whatever was there was keeping up with him. He didn't run immediately, trying to stay calm, but his movements became faster, more urgent, as he made his way through the rooms, heading toward the exit. The footsteps followed the entire time, always just behind him, never rushing, never falling behind. And then, just as he reached the final room before the front door, the sound stopped completely. The sudden silence felt unnatural, wrong. He slowed down slightly, his breathing uneven, his eyes scanning the doorway ahead. Something felt off. He stepped forward carefully, crossing into the last room. And that's when he saw it, the front door. It was closed, completely shut. His heart dropped. He was sure he had left it open when he came in. He rushed forward, grabbing the handle, pulling it open quickly, the door creaking loudly as it moved. The moment it opened, he heard something behind him. Not footsteps this time. Not distant, right next to him. A soft sound, like someone exhaling. Close enough that it felt like it was just over his shoulder. He didn't turn around. He didn't check. He ran. Straight out of the house, not stopping until he was far away from it. His heart racing, his mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. Later, when he reviewed the photos he had taken that night, hoping to find anything that could explain it. Most of them looked normal. Empty rooms, dark hallways, nothing unusual. But one photo stood out. It was taken in that long corridor, the same one with the slightly open door. At first glance, it looked like the others. But when he looked closer, something didn't feel right. At the far end of the hallway, where there should have been nothing, there was a shape, faint, almost blending into the darkness, but definitely there. Standing still, facing directly toward him. He never went back to that house again. And even now, what unsettles him the most isn't just what he heard, but what he didn't see at the time. The thing that stayed just out of view, just behind him, matching his every step, waiting until the very end to get as close as possible without being noticed. The third story comes from a man who had recently moved into a small town for work. A place where everything felt quieter than usual, slower, almost disconnected from the outside world. And not far from where he was staying, there was an old abandoned house that people in the area rarely talked about. The kind of place that just existed on the background without explanation. At first, he didn't pay much attention to it, but over time, curiosity started to build, especially after he noticed something strange. Every time he passed by the house, late in the evening, one of the upstairs windows always looked slightly different. Not open, not clearly broken, just not the same as the others. One night, after weeks of ignoring it, he decided to check it out. He told himself it was just curiosity, nothing more, and made his way toward the house just after dark. As he approached, the atmosphere felt heavier, the silence deeper, but he pushed past it and stepped inside through the front entrance, his flashlight illuminating the interior. The house was exactly what you would expect. Empty, worn down, filled with dust and decay, nothing immediately unusual. Just another abandoned place. He moved slowly, exploring each room, checking corners, shining his light across walls that hadn't been touched in years. And for a while, nothing happened. It was quiet, too quiet. But still, normal. Then as he reached the base of the staircase, something caught his attention. A sound. Faint, coming from above. He froze, listening carefully, his mind trying to make sense of it. It sounded like movement, slow, measured, walking across the upper floor. His first instinct was to leave immediately, but curiosity held him in place for a moment longer. He told himself it could be an animal, maybe something living in the house, something harmless. But the pattern didn't feel random. It felt controlled. After a few seconds, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against him in a way that made the entire house feel different. And then, a single creak came from the top of the stairs. His grip tightened on the flashlight as he stared upward into the darkness. His instincts telling him to leave. But something else, something quieter, kept him there. Slowly, he started walking up the stairs, each step echoing softly beneath him, the sound of his movement breaking through the stillness. When he reached the second floor, the air felt colder, the darkness thicker. He moved carefully, checking each room one by one, finding nothing but empty spaces and broken furniture, until he reached the end of the hallway, where the door to the final room was slightly open. The same kind of detail he had noticed from outside. He stood there for a moment staring at it, a quiet unease settling in his chest, before slowly pushing it open. The room inside was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no movement, just walls and dust and silence. He stepped inside, cautiously, shining his light around, confirming that there was nothing there, and then turned back toward the hallway and stopped. The door behind him was closed, completely shut. His heart skipped for a moment as he stepped forward quickly, reaching for the handle and pulling it open. The hallway outside looked exactly the same, empty, silent. He stepped out, his breathing slightly uneven now, the feeling of unease stronger than before. Something wasn't right. He decided to leave. Immediately. No more exploring. No more curiosity. He turned toward the staircase and started walking, his pace quick, focused on getting out of the house as soon as possible. But as he moved, something changed. The hallway felt longer than it should have. He kept walking, expecting to reach the stairs within seconds, but they didn't appear. He slowed down, confused, looking around, his flashlight scanning the walls. But everything looked the same. The same doors, the same layout. Nothing had changed except the distance. A cold realization began to form in his mind. This wasn't right. He turned around, trying to go back the way he came, but the hallway stretched in that direction too. No stairs, no end. Just the same repeating space. His breathing grew heavier as panic started to take over. He began walking faster, then faster still, his footsteps echoing louder now as he moved, trying to find any way out, any sign of the staircase. But it wasn't there. And then he heard it, footsteps, not his own, coming from behind him, slow, measured, matching the rhythm of something walking calmly through the same endless hallway. He didn't turn around. He didn't want to. But the sound grew closer, one step at a time, each one echoing clearly in the confined space. His heart pounded as he kept moving, faster now, almost running. But the footsteps didn't change. They didn't rush. They didn't slow down. They just followed, consistent, controlled, always at the same distance behind him. And then something worse happened. The footsteps stopped. The sudden silence felt overwhelming. And then a voice spoke, calm, close, too close. It said, "You weren't supposed to leave." His entire body went cold because the voice didn't come from behind him. It came from in front of him. He froze, his mind struggling to process what that meant. His flashlight shaking slightly as he slowly raised it, pointing it down the hallway ahead. For a brief second, he saw something, a shape, standing there, blocking the path. Not clear, not fully visible, but definitely there. And then the light flickered just once, and when it stabilized, the hallway was gone. He was standing at the base of the staircase, back where he had started. The house completely silent again. No footsteps, no voice, nothing. He didn't question it. He didn't look around. He ran, straight out of the house, not stopping until he was far away from it. But even now, what stays with him isn't just what he heard or saw. It's what it suggests, because whatever happened inside that house wasn't just about being trapped. It was about being let go, because something inside had the ability to keep him there. And for some reason, it chose not to. And the most unsettling thing about abandoned houses isn't just what people see or hear inside them. It's the way those experiences unfold. Because in every one of these stories, nothing happened immediately. Nothing rushed. Nothing revealed itself too quickly. It all started slowly, quietly, almost harmless. like the house was just observing, waiting, letting people step deeper inside before anything changed. A door moving on its own, footsteps that didn't belong to anyone, a hallway that refused to lead back the way it should. Three different experiences, but all following the same pattern. The same feeling that something inside those places wasn't just random, it was aware, controlled, intentional. And maybe that's what makes abandoned houses feel so different from any other place, because they are not just empty structures. They're spaces where time has stopped, where no one is supposed to be, where silence exists for so long that when it's broken, it doesn't feel natural anymore. Because think about it. When you walk into a place that hasn't been touched in years, where every sound echoes louder than it should, where every step feels like it doesn't belong, you're not just exploring a building. You're stepping into a space that has existed without you for a long time, and maybe something else has too. Something that doesn't need light, doesn't need noise, doesn't need to be seen clearly to exist. Something that stays just out of sight, just out of reach, watching quietly until someone finally walks in. And the most disturbing part is, it doesn't always try to stop you from leaving. Sometimes it lets you go, not because it can't keep you there, but because it doesn't need to. Because once you've experienced it, once you've felt that presence, heard those sounds, seen something that shouldn't have been there, you don't really leave with nothing. You take something with you, not physically, but mentally. A memory that doesn't fade, a feeling that doesn't fully go away, the quiet thought that maybe in places where nothing should exist, something still does. So the next time you see an abandoned house, standing alone, silent, untouched, looking like nothing more than an empty shell, take a moment before you step inside, because it might not be as empty as it looks. And if something is there, something patient, something aware, something that only reveals itself when everything else is still, you might not notice it right away, but that doesn't mean it hasn't already noticed you.